If you enjoy movies, comic books, and pop culture, be sure to like and subscribe.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the REC Podcast, brought to you by REC Comics and Collectibles. I'm your host, Roman Chavez, and with me never is Eric Icarus, but we do have the big Tuna in the house today. Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah,
you can follow us online at REC Podcast. You can follow me at Roman REC Podcast. You can follow the shop at REC Comics, or you can come visit me at 7679 North Union Boulevard in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And you can find Big Tuna playing for the Falcons in Falcon. He's a old senior.
Yeah. You know, hey, it takes some people 18 years. You know, I get it.
Yeah, toughest 18 years of my life, you know?
I just keep forgetting to file that paperwork. You know, I don't know what it is.
Oh, man. How are you doing this week, buddy?
Pretty good. It was really, you know, it was a crazy week. It's always weird having Halloween at the beginning of the week.
Yeah.
You know, it's something you, like, ramp up towards. Mm-hmm. And so to make it at the start of the week kind of creates this like weird lull. Mm-hmm. So kind of getting back into the swing of things. So.
In middle school, do kids dress up?
Yeah. So one of my
Jordan's a teacher, by the way. Yeah. I'm just curious.
From what I can see, from a court mandated 150 yards away. One of my favorite moments of all of the Stranger Things stuff is in Stranger Things season 2. They're working on their Ghostbuster costumes. There's the argument about like you're gonna be Winston. He's like, why do I gotta be Winston? He's like, do I gotta say it? You know? Yeah. And so they get their costumes and stuff, and they go to school, and no one is dressed up. And it's this whole thing, and it's always stood out to me because there are so many kids in all the years I've been teaching. There's so many kids who are like, Halloween's not cool. It's a way to kind of be like mature and grown up. Yeah. But like also like everyone loves candy. Yeah. You know, there's a reason why like 9-year-olds are walking around with like Werther's Originals. You know, at my school, like, you know, like, most people were, you know, in costume, that sort of thing. Okay. I had a horse hat. It was like a little head thing, with like a soft stuffed like just horse head. And when people asked me what I was, I said I was a reverse centaur. Luke had fun. He was Michelangelo. We had a little zip up for baby girl. She was a little fluffy unicorn. So the kids definitely had the fun.
Nice. Yeah, we were the Beast and a bunch of bells. So my wife was like the one where she's in like the blue and white like dress when she's in the town singing, and then my daughter had like the pink, and my oldest daughter had the yellow dancing one,
ball gown,
and I had a pretty sweet beast head.
Dude, I don't want to say missed opportunity, but like had you gone as Satan, you could have been Hell's Bells. That was awesome. Man,
nice.
Yeah. I love pun related costumes.
I can imagine. You look like you do.
Yeah. I'm offended by that. I know exactly what you mean by that, and I don't care for it.
Oh man. Well, Halloween came and went, and over this past weekend, we got to pour one out. Just dump that out on the table for Matthew Perry of Friends fame that he does not want to be remembered of. Yeah. But unfortunately, Chandler Bing has gone over to the other side. I know you weren't a big Friends guy, were you?
Yeah, I mean, I probably watched through the series probably twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't the kind of thing where it's like, I mean, some people are like into it where it's like, you know, they've got like, I don't collect anything Friends.
Sure.
You know, like I don't have I did actually, weirdly enough, in like middle school, actually, I had a Central Perk hat. A cadet that we sponsored from the Air Force Academy had like left at our house. I was like, oh yeah, you can have it. And the show was on. It was just starting syndication though, like at that time, where it was like airing on Fox from beginning while new episodes were airing on NBC. And that's really kind of when I first had gotten into it. And then I didn't probably see the last 2 or 3 seasons when they were new. Yeah. It just kind of fell off. And then I went back and watched them. And then I went back and watched the whole thing again. So like most series, you know, like The Simpsons, I would even argue like Seinfeld, the majority of the good stuff's the more earlier stuff. Yeah. Bringing in new characters, new storylines and stuff, new romances. It's just, I get why they do it, but it's just, it doesn't typically work for a lot of shows.
I knew you were a big Seinfeld guy, and you're usually either or, a Seinfeld or
Yeah.
a Friends fan. I was a Friends person. This bums me out. Chandler was arguably my favorite character on that show. I don't think there's any wasted moments with him. It's so crazy to watch him suffer through addiction through the filming of that show.
Yeah,
Just
you
wildly
see-
skinny.
Yeah.
But never misses a beat.
No,
I mean, funny in every incarnation. He's a functioning addict there for a long time. But I mean, his character was great. He was, his comedy. There's not really another person like him. Like he's definitely,
he had a lane.
Yes,
He had a lane. He was fantastic in that lane.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was. His only weakness is that I didn't think he sold like serious as well. But he was. I mean, everything else was just stellar. Were you a fan of him outside of those projects?
Yeah,
of Friends.
Yeah, there was a few things I gave a quick peek at the filmography. I think one thing that many people sleep on as like a pretty decent Matthew Perry performance, even though he's not in the movie too much, is 17 Again. A reverse big.
Yeah.
You could call it a little.
Yeah.
And he's the adult, burned out dad sort of thing. He can't connect with his kids. All of a sudden this thing happens. He's younger. He's 17. Zac Efron.
He wishes.
Yeah. If only one could. But what's interesting is like Zac Efron does a good job playing who Matthew Perry was in the movie.
Yeah.
It's like one of the few like times where it's like you really like see Zac Efron like actually like putting in like effort, and it's fairly boilerplate, like with the Freaky Friday type moments, and seeing his daughter the way she really is at school, and and some of that kind of stuff. So there are a few of those moments. Really, probably my favorite Matthew Perry project, more so than Friends, was Fools Rush In.
Oh, I love
Fools Rush In. It's those late 90s romantic comedies.
Yeah.
And it hit it. It was unique and different. It gave us, this kind of twist. This couple, they meet, they hit it off, they have a one-night stand. They're from different cultures, which is not typically done in a lot of rom-coms. It's usually people in the same culture. There's the burnout workaholic, and it's the Hallmark formula. But like Fools Rush In, like she's like from this Hispanic family and heritage. Young Selma Hayek. I mean, young old. It's Selma Hayek. She's truly an eternal. And she's pregnant. So all of a sudden now it becomes an issue of like, what are we going to do? And they get married, and so it has a lot of fun play on kind of those expectations. It's about it's about people that are not in love yet, but they feel like they need to have that commitment. They're going to have a baby, and so that creates new paths for the story to go that not a lot of other stuff has done well. It's definitely worth a rewatch. I went back and found a few scenes on YouTube that like kind of stood out to me. I was like, oh my gosh, it was the kind of movie my mom had on in the background, like doing laundry and that sort of stuff, and I'd catch here and there. And then eventually I got to the point where I sat down and watched it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is funny. And he's a lot of Chandler Bing, but he's not Chandler Bing. Like there's definitely some distinction there.
When he kills that guy.
So Fools Rush In now. Arguably, there's probably another movie series, two movies that he was more well known for,
and that's the whole 9 yards, and then subsequently the whole 10 yards. But I can tell you, I honestly don't remember him other than I was like, oh cool, Bruce Willis and Chandler, and then later on Bruce Willis had like a 3-episode arc as Ross's like college student girlfriend's dad or whatever.
He like dated Rachel, right?
And then he dated Rachel.
I remember there was a moment where he like Ross is like they were like at like a cabin, and Ross is like hiding out in the bathroom, and like he's like trying to like pump himself up, and it's just like it's such a Bruce Willis moment there,
I'm just in love.
He just love this shit, but I mean it's funny because it's very similar to my experience with Get Shorty. Where like a lot of people were talking about it, and I'm like, oh, I love those actors. Like I love Hackman, I love John Travolta, but like I don't like the movie. And then with the whole 9 yards, from what I've seen, I never could get into it. Like I like Michael Clark Duncan. I like Bruce Willis. But I just Yeah.
You know, it's just funny because, yes, I would go back and like, I want to go back and watch some Friends because I'm bummed out, but I'm also like, it's hard to watch the comedians after they've died. It's just like, you know, gives it some sting or takes some sting out of it. I don't know what the right way to go with that is, but yeah, it's a real bummer. I think as far as just like a pure comedic actor, and I mean, again, on syndicated TV, such a memorable character. I mean, he's not as eccentric as a Kramer, but definitely like, you know, Kramer hits harder. Chandler kind of hits harder for most people, and it's a real bummer that he's gone real young too. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I know that some people, they've been talking a lot about the addiction.
Yeah.
My wife read his book.
Yeah.
And you know, those of us that saw the Friends reunion they did on HBO Max, you know, it's the hard thing about addiction, and it's very similar to the way that people talk about cancer, where they'll talk about like, oh, someone, you know, lost the battle with cancer, or somebody lost the battle with addiction. But he truly was committed to fighting this issue.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's hard is that when it comes to whether it's mental health issues with depression and anxiety, or what, you know, substance abuse issues, you know, whatever those things are, I think a lot of us that are kind of the average person, you know, we look at someone that's successful and we say, like, you know, how have you turned your life over to this?
Yeah.
How are you struggling with this? How are you struggling with that? I was going back and actually right after Matthew Perry passed, I don't know why, I just kind of felt inspired to look up and do some reading about Owen Wilson's suicide attempt that he had back in the mid 2000s, late mid 2000s. It was like 2007, I think.
Dang, that long ago.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Drillbit Taylor was right on the cusp of coming out, and like there was this whole thing about the studio pushing it or not, and I don't even think he did marketing for the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this whole thing of like, you know, here's this funny guy, and he's got, you know, his life's together, and he's, you know, and you know, it's hard to go back and try to say like what went wrong.
Yeah.
But the truth is that addiction, you know, if there is a chemical dependency, substance abuse issue, whatever it is, like that's a daily battle.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one loss.
Yeah.
But that's not something that should measure the totality of a career, a life.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a person outside of his acting career, and people have all kinds of struggles.
Dude, and dated so many like dimes back in the day, man. I mean, Julia Roberts, Yasmin Bleeth, you know, like, I mean, just it was really good to see. Oh, the funny guy can get the girl.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I do think you're right, though. It is sometimes hard to go back and look at comedy, and you'll look at it different.
Yeah.
You know, probably the one comedian that I wouldn't say I like his stuff more since he's gone, but I don't feel the sting as much, is Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald stuff still hits really good.
Yeah.
And it is sad because it's like, oh my gosh, what would he say about this?
Yeah.
Or whatever, but like there is some staying power behind a lot of his stand-up stuff, his Norm Macdonald show, his podcast, you know, even Weekend Update skits. I mean, there's some good stuff out there. And again, there will be people exposed to Matthew Perry's genius in the next coming generation.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he and that character, that will have staying power for a long time.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. It sucks when the funny one dies first. You know, bums me out. But you know, in other news, we can, you know, redirect our misfocused, you know, feelings about Matthew Perry's, you know, demise. Man, seems like everything at Disney is falling apart, which is just insane. It's insane.
Yeah, there is someone right now, I'm sure, it's probably Michael Lewis, who wrote like Moneyball and like The Big Short. He's probably writing a book right now called like Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
And what's going on at Disney, what's been going on at Disney, it's been up and down. And right now there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of reports out and a lot of speculation. I think in general, the big pattern, the big trend we're seeing is that Disney, you know, through their Marvel properties, are considering a pretty seismic realignment with the MCU. Which is ironic because it seems like a lot of this revolves around a character who, by definition, could be anyone, and that is Kang. You know, there was the Jonathan Majors arrest story, which is still in the news.
Yeah.
There is still stuff coming out about that. They didn't shelve his character and retool Loki Season 2. His character, you know, both He Who Remains, Victor Timely have been featured on the show. But, you know, when they came out and said that these phases are leading towards Secret Wars, Kang Dynasty, gosh, everyone, you had this sense of like they're building up to something big, and we've had some serious misfires.
Yeah.
Serious misfires.
It's crazy because it seems like Marvel had done such a good... I mean, they did a great job for 10 years keeping... I mean, they resurrected Robert Downey Jr. and, they've kept their noses pretty clean, in other franchises like Transformers, where we had, Shia LaBeouf issues and stuff like that. Like, Marvel had been relatively squeaky, but then... I mean, there's still stuff about name more actor. Oh my gosh.
Oh, Tenoch Huerta.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tenoch. Yeah.
Huerta, yeah. But he, he was having some issues, and I mean that's been nothing but quiet since.
Yeah.
And I haven't even seen that dude. Disney probably had him killed, but it's
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Woo! No, it's just a very strange thing to. One, tell us where we're going before we've even started. Mm-hmm. That's not Marvel. When we watched Avengers, that last scene of Thanos, I mean, that was a big, big deal.
Yeah.
Spoiler alerts for Loki season 1. When you see He Who Remains in the last 2 episodes of that, it blows you away because it wasn't something we had seen coming. So it's like there's no. They're blowing up the map. Like there's no map now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you cut a new trailer, you cut a new path. It's going to be some work.
Yeah,
and I feel like unfortunately Disney's lost a lot of trust with fans. There's been a lot of mishandling. Mm-hmm. There, Ant-Man Quantumania was a dud in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. A lot of people didn't care for the CG. A lot of people didn't care for the story.
Just recently heard it on a podcast of like nothing about like comics or movies or anything, but they were like the hosts were talking about their least favorite movies of all time, and Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania was on one dude's list.
See, I mean, I don't know. I've seen some really terrible stuff.
I know.
But again, and there is a concern. There is a tendency to lean towards recency. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, oh my gosh, you just saw a movie, you come out of a movie and you're like disappointed. Mm-hmm. Like you're going to feel that sting differently than a movie that you saw 10 years ago that was absolutely terrible that you'd never considered like watching again. Like it'll feel different. So we had that happen. We had Ant-Man Quantumania, which Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which kind of left a bad taste in fans' mouths, only to be followed up by The Marvels, mm-hmm. which has been very hit or miss with the marketing. I made a mention on a previous episode how they sort of have seemed like they've really taken the focus off of the 2 supporting Marvels, really to focus in on Captain Marvel, to the extent that a TV spot that I was watching the other day, most of the content of the 30-second spot, probably 18 seconds, were from Captain Marvel or Endgame. And they're billing this now as the next step. Like, you don't want to miss what happens next. Like, what happens after Endgame. And it's like, are they trying to convince us that we need to sit through the Marvels to truly know the trajectory of the MCU? Because I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
Some fans were getting really nitpicky. I saw a couple tweets yesterday where they were fixating on this marketing strategy of them saying, be there to see what happens next. And when the letters disappear, there's one letter that lingers a little bit longer than the others, and that's the X. And I mean, okay, that's pretty cool, that's pretty creative, but
that's not what's happening.
No. And again, we have to remember that the Ms. Marvel series was the first series that by name mentioned mutants.
Yeah.
And that went nowhere. It's gone nowhere yet.
Yeah.
Right? We know that we're getting mutants in the MCU. We know we're going to get an X-Men property in the MCU. That's, again, it's like, don't sell me on that hype anymore. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately what happened in phase 1 and in phase 2 is the hype brought me there and it blew the expectations out of the water.
Yeah.
Now they're trying to breadcrumb stuff in. It feels like, intentionally or unintentionally. They're trying to breadcrumb the hype in. And I think for the most part, are going to sit back. She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Ant-Man. I mean, there's been a lot of bad taste left in the mouths of fans. And unfortunately, after the Marvels, we're gonna hit a gap.
A lull.
We're gonna hit a lull. I think we're gonna get 2025 releases. I don't think we're gonna get. I think it's very unlikely we get any MCU 2024 releases.
Yeah. Maybe Deadpool, but not MCU. Yeah. MCU proper.
Yeah, and I think we only get Deadpool if the writer strike, or I'm sorry, if the Screen Actors Guild strike, and they get back into production, which they're not in right now. Yeah. They've got to get back into that here within the next few months.
And they're not going to be in production over the holidays.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then you got to realign people's schedules, and they're going to have big names, and, you got to get Taylor in for her Dazzler, cameo. So we're getting Captain America, Brave New World. We'll be getting a Thunderbolts. Those two properties are coming up. We're going to be getting some Sony and Marvel related products, right? We're getting Kraven. We're getting Madam Web. Yeah, I know. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, a third Venom movie, and yes, fans we're all gonna be so hyped for Deadpool 3. And they'll likely exceed the hype. Okay, we're all stoked for it. We're getting Hugh Jackman back. I totally get that, but that's not going to bring me to the Marvels. I have to care about the Marvels to go see the Marvels.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Endgame in a way was maybe a little too successful for Marvel because they gave us this big bookend of this story that now some of the reports that are coming out is that not only is Disney considering retooling and revamping their kind of Kang approach and maybe going towards a Doctor Doom or another a villain-centered arc in the Phase, there was even a report out that they are considering retooling and bringing back the original, the OG team.
Which would
Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, to essentially to kind of reliven the franchise. And we've talked before about if we would see something like that in Secret Wars, where it's sort of like their last hurrah. They're wrapping up the multiverse. It's really the last chance you can do that.
Yeah.
I get that idea, but it's gonna feel desperate now at this point.
Yeah.
When you see miss after miss after miss. When you look at that first phase, the biggest misses of those early Marvel movies are what? Some argue probably Iron Man 2. Yeah. There's stuff about it I like. There's stuff I don't like.
Thor 1.
Thor 1 and Thor 2. Mm-hmm. There was, I liked a lot of stuff in Thor 2. I didn't care too much about the villains. It felt, it felt fairly generic, the Dark Elves. But there was some other stuff I liked. There was stuff here and there. But now we're getting these Marvel products where it's like, oh my gosh, what is there? Yeah. What's keeping me there? Yeah.
And I can't confirm if I'm being kind of leaded away by this groupthink, but the idea that we're focusing on, it seems like Disney and Marvel are trying to bring in an audience that's not there, be it in just women-centric characters or just obscure characters alone. It's the stuff that you still have to get that let's call it, 65% comic book fan base, because you used to have that baked in. You used to. And literally all I'm seeing on social media, people I follow, other comic book people, is just are people done with comic book movies? And, the fatigue has set in. We've been talking about it for years, but ultimately they just haven't given us anything that like you said, is exceeding our expectations.
Yeah. And some of the most successful recent comic related stuff is the stuff that's not very comic book feeling. Yeah. Right? Look at what DC did with Joker, which again I would almost not even really consider even a DC movie, right? It's really just Joker in name only. It's a Gino. Okay, maybe we'll come up with a different name for that. Yeah, that's a different movie. That's an Image Comics. And Matt Reeves' The Batman, which gave us different takes on a comic book universe. The problem with having a fully integrated movie universe is that these products have to be coherently structured together. Yeah. Again, I think it's a hard ask. I think it's a hard ask in 2023 that generic fans. We're not even saying the people that watch the show or listen to the podcast or go in the comic book shop. We're talking about the person who's it's May, there's a superhero movie going out, let's go watch it. Are we expecting them to have watched a 6-episode series of She-Hulk on Disney Plus?
No.
Did they watch Miss Marvel? Do they understand, that this reference and this reference and these things? And I mean, Shield, Agents of Shield, really supplemented a lot of arcs in the MCU. It told its new things. It did its own take on Inhumans and did some different stuff with some more of those secondary characters. It gave us a really awesome Ghost Rider and stuff. Totally well and fine, but you didn't have to watch Agents of Shield to understand Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they're pulling back on that a little bit. And if not, the movies need to be written for the movie audience. They do. Because that's who goes sees the movie.
Yeah.
Yes, you will get movie audience members that have also watched Loki Season 2.
Yeah.
But if you won't understand Secret Wars without having watched Loki Season 2, or at that point, maybe even Loki Season 3, that's a hard ask.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying earlier about kind of some of the female-centric storylines, one movie that I would have thought would have been immune to the Panderverse, as South Park would call it, let's cast this movie based on the social justice bingo card. The one movie I thought would be immune to that would be Blade.
Yeah.
And
this is great.
Yeah. So the reporting is a source familiar with the script said that it was going to be a female-led and mostly female-centric story, to the point where Blade, the actual character of which the movie is named, would be almost like a third-tier character. Whether it's now when you go back and watch the original Blade movie, a fair amount of the movie early on is focused on this doctor, this female doctor.
Which is great. Strong female character.
Yeah.
Survives a vampire attack.
And her story, she's like a doctor. So she has a necessary component. You can incorporate diversity. You can incorporate different voices into a story.
Yeah.
With that, what I don't want to see is the main character being, this orphan girl who just happens to get rescued, and she's scrappily, like the weird orphan kid in Spawn, where it's like, what are we doing? Why are we following these kids? So give me a reason to care. Give me someone that doesn't feel like they can be just like pulled out from the story. I mean, that was the one thing that in the Transformers series, the first Transformers movie, Shia LaBeouf's character Sam is pretty replaceable.
Sam Witwicky.
And then in the second one, his brain gets scanned, and it's they actually need him, and he has a relevance to the story. But again, it's all these troublesome signs showing up that I think pre-Endgame fans would have just been no, they'll figure it out. They'll be fine. They had built in that trust. But post Endgame, there's been a sense of, and there have been some good. Don't get me wrong, right? We've had some good, successful original stories, and I mean, Spider-Man: No Way Home, Shang-Chi. We've had some, parts of Eternals at least. We've had some pretty cool, innovative, unique storytelling after Endgame. But man, some of these misses. Again, it's you're really losing steam.
They're so it's burnt food,
Yeah.
It's leaving that acrid.
You can
taste.
tell what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But if you eat something that's burned, spit it out.
Yeah.
And you eat something that's good, you're gonna taste that burnt food still. It does affect the palate.
Yes. Big Tuna, give me something you like burnt. Go. Is there any food you like where you're like, oh, this is a little more charred than it should be?
Burnt ends.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Burnt ends.
Which I'm not a big barbecue guy actually, but that's something where it's I'll do that.
I like a grilled hot dog that's really
Oh
charred.
yeah,
really
yeah.
charred
My
hot
wife,
dog.
she likes it with the cook on it.
Yeah.
Not the steam plate.
Yeah.
Not the
but
yeah.
you can go to hell there.
Get it on the grill. Get a little bit of blister. On there. Yeah, for sure.
I like it a little bit past blister. It's almost probably unhealthy, but it's so good like that. And then I like a really brown marshmallow from my s'more.
Yeah, but corn on the grill,
a little
where
bit,
it gets a little bit of that black char, a little bit really brings out the sweet flavor of the corn, sweet corn. Oh yeah.
Now if that was burned to the cob, that's what Marvel's doing. It's this could have been a really nice charred piece of corn, but now it is just not put ash in my mouth. Now, this idea of them kind of going the Doctor Doom route could make some sense because there was a long time where it was kind of a mystery on who Kang was, and it was really thought to either A, be Doom, or be an ancestor of Doom. That never really came to fruition, but it was very much like you thought that for a long time in comics. All I know is I'm glad that we're seeing some directional changes. They're being very vocal about it. It's kind of like the squeaky wheel thing. I don't know if this bodes anything well for Kevin Feige because he did have, he had it. He had it in his hands, man. And with great power comes great responsibility, and he's kind of, let it go the wayside. I wonder what's happened there. He doesn't talk much, so it's like, we're never going to know.
Yeah, and this stuff is leaking out. These anonymous reports, these are coming out from
the house.
Yeah, the call is from inside the house. Yeah. And now I've speculated that it may be to offset some of the critiques we're going to hear if the Marvels is not the success that people think it could be, or that Disney hopes it will be, if it ends up not being.
Right now, there's no reason the Marvels should be a box office success. So to have that in your head is you're not paying attention.
Yeah,
I
don't think it domestic. I don't think it does 100 million. I don't think it does 100 million. I think it does like maybe 75 to, we'll say like 83. Yeah, 75 to 83.
Like full run. Or opening weekend?
Opening weekend.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Opening weekend.
Oh, God.
Yeah. No, it'll make... I think it'll make... I think when all's said and done, it'll make half a bill. Like,
Which ain't bad, man.
Which ain't bad, no. But again, you look at the... when you... Comparing a child to their siblings...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be... because they're going to compare it to Captain Marvel.
Yeah. And the Captain Marvel was a Billy.
Yeah, which was a Billy.
Yeah.
And it was also when Marvel was hitting their stride.
Yeah.
And now we're on this tail end. It's again it almost sounds like in the pregame interview when the coach is talking about hurt players.
Oh.
You know why they're talking about hurt players. It's to manage expectations if the team doesn't do well. It's to help establish the storyline that, we knew coming into this game we were going to have our offensive line is injured, and we get, our running game, we're tweaking this. And it when the story becomes the possible reasons for failure, it's almost expected there to not be a success.
Yeah.
And, for whatever reason, with all this stuff coming out, this is going to elicit some kind of change.
Sure.
And that change is either going to be Marvel coming out and saying, listen, we're going to scale back on product. I know I've mentioned that before, that we're getting too much of everything right now. Focus on 2 or 3 solid movies, creating a coherent universe. Yeah. Signing actors to multiple stories, giving us longevity with certain characters, but also knowing when to put it down. I love Chris Hemsworth's Thor, but I feel like we can be done with Thor. Mm-hmm. They've given us enough characters that they can move on. We've also talked before about the potential that the Marvels will springboard a Young Avengers, giving us some new blood and a new team up sort of thing, which who knows? I mean, who knows when we would get the next team up? Which I wouldn't count Fantastic Four, because it's like they're a team already, Yeah. So probably Secret Wars or Kang Dynasty. There is some talk too. There was a lot of chatter about Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man leading the team in Secret Wars. Which
so weird.
Which honestly, I really take no stock in those claims.
No,
there's no casting announcements coming out during the Screen Actors strike.
Yeah,
there's none. To the point where the director of Fantastic Four have said we are going to announce the family when the when the Screen Actors Guild strike ends. Yeah. They've got this lined up, but they're not announcing this stuff. And I get it. It's the negotiations and contracts, and I get it. But we're talking about a movie that's down the road that again that's the 0-14 talking about what their meal is going to be right before the Super Bowl game. It's no, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I really as much as Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, maybe Deadpool 3 is not his last hurrah, and it brings it, and stuff or whatever. Again, I just don't think there's any reason to believe any of that stuff right now.
Yeah.
If you can't tell me if you can't tell me how we're going to get to Secret Wars, don't tell me who's going to be in it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I cannot believe that that Disney is looking down the road here at what might end up being 4 or 5 feature films from now.
Yeah.
And they can't even get a Blade movie made. I can't believe it. I really don't.
The Blade movie has been in development hell for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's got a carousel of writers and directors.
Mm-hmm.
And there was talk that Marshala Ali was considering walking from the project. That now they have to retool with an under $100 million budget, perhaps. That Disney might be scaling back and saying like we need to take this stuff a little bit more smaller scale, because when you make a movie on $200 million, it's got to make $400.
Yes.
To be considered a success.
Yeah.
Not even to break even, but to be considered some kind of success.
Mm-hmm.
And now a lot of stuff has changed the game. COVID changed the game in many ways. Streaming has changed the game in many ways. And I wonder now if so many people have become acclimated with the 45-day window between theatrical release and home release that it's like...
That is hurting them.
Do I need to go out and watch this movie opening weekend when a month and a half from now, a movie that I'm not super stoked to see, I'll be able to get for, a $9 rental at home.
Yeah. Nah, it's crazy how much it's changed since 2019.
Yeah.
If COVID happens a year before, Infinity War doesn't happen, or Endgame doesn't happen correctly. You know what I mean? Like, it really was a reset on society and on film, and we didn't. Actually, I won't say that Marvel didn't adjust, because they put out a lot of product.
Yeah.
In a time where people were in their houses and needed to watch stuff and didn't want to go out, Marvel provided, Disney provided. So I'm one of the few fanboys that I'm not fully against them, not even a little bit, or not too much, just because they've given me so many things that I'm thankful for. It's just, their due diligence seems to be lacking. To have that 10-year span and have no controversy in that time. I mean, was there anything that you could think of in that time?
Honestly, the biggest controversies were recasting Edward Norton, recasting Terrence Howard, and there was weird reports about Mickey Rourke's behavior between Expendables and Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
We're talking about pre-Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, after that,
they got squeaky.
Yeah,
they got real squeaky. So yes, the due diligence, getting these actors signed up. We do have to create stars again, but we still have to leave some meat on the bone to bring back a Robert Downey Jr. one time. You get one time to bring him back, and it matter. If you overdo it, I think it's done. It's done.
Who would you rather see brought back for a one? It's gonna be one or the other, and it's only gonna be once. Who would you rather see back? Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Evans?
It depends on the setting, but I think as an audience we'd rather see RDJ, but it's close.
I think we'd rather see RDJ because he was our introduction to the MCU, and he was the on-screen death.
Totally.
We saw that sacrifice. Yeah. Cap got to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah. And Cap's still alive technically.
Yeah, I just mean to see the reappearance.
Yeah.
To see the return of the king.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it is very easy for us on this side of the table, who are not in the industry, who are not in the business, who aren't in the know about the complexities of this and that. And it is to be fully fair, it is easy for us to be critical and say from our perspective. We are talking from our perspective.
Sure.
Unfortunately, our perspective is maybe not the majority, but it's a very loud portion of the fan base.
Yeah.
And I would never presume to say that we speak for comic book fans, globally, but
I fight for the users.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
Oh yeah.
But God, man, we need to do it. We need to do a Tron Legacy watch party. Man, that's got some bangers in there. But even though it's easy for us to critique, again, we are the ones that decide if we're paying the $10.50 to go see the movie.
Yeah.
And if we don't feel like they're selling us on it, unfortunately for Marvel, there are other products out there. And unfortunately for DC, as they have shown DC, there are other products to go explore. And so, again, it's the marketplace at work.
Yeah.
And it is about putting people that you trust in these positions to make these decisions, to clearly articulate the path that you are going to take these stories, the stories that many of us have grown up with, that I think a lot of us feel like it's almost a part of us.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be let down. I promise you, there were people that that watched The Flash that were let down. That was their childhood hero. And to see him like microwaving a baby, but yeah, I don't know. It's Disney needs to come out pretty quick, and make some stuff known. We have 2 more episodes of Loki. One is airing tonight, so we're filming this on Thursday, and then there's 1 more episode.
Okay.
I've tried to avoid any kind of spoilers. I saw a generic comment where someone said that after watching episode 6, they're not sure what Marvel's going to do with Kang. I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe there's the repair of the sacred timeline. We'll see how this plays out. There's a lot of talk that Miss Minutes, the TVA, are going to play a sizable role in Deadpool. Maybe the TVA are going to these dying, branching timelines and getting heroes.
Yeah.
And Sean Levy, director of Deadpool 3, did say that Logan is canon in Deadpool 3. So Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, his life and death is canon. So we might be getting a variant, a branched Wolverine. And they go to a universe where he hadn't died, where all of the events of Logan that take place after their time with the X-Men, where those things haven't taken place.
Just earlier on in the Logan timeline.
Yeah. So after the Wolverine, prior to Days of Future Past, or however they work it in. But yeah, so there is still content out there. And they still have talented actors. They still have talented writers. But yeah, right now at this point, I would say 4 years ago, that Marvel didn't have to sell me on most of their products. But now, you need to convince me. You need to make the offer.
All right, kids, that's our show. If you like what we're doing, please hit that subscribe button. Click that little bell so that you know when we have new content. Are you, we've asked this question a lot of different ways, but hearing about that Blade stuff, where's your meter at? I'd love to hear about it in the shop. I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Big Tuna, do you have any takes for us? Yeah,
I've got one take.
Yeah.
When it comes to comedians that have passed, before their time, or they still have a career in front of them, the one that always stands out to me, because I was such a fan of his and young when he died, was Chris Farley. And there's a lot of Chris Farley stuff that still holds up. SNL skits still hold up. Tommy Boy, Black Sheep. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because Almost Heroes.
Yeah.
Which gives us not only Chris Farley's, I believe, last theatrical film, but Matthew Perry.
Wow. Crazy. And on that note, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. I've been your host, Roman Chavez, and for the Big Tuna, we'll catch you on the next podcast.